All right. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining for the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust Annual General Meeting. We're pleased to have such a great group of you attending today. So just a reminder, as folks are coming in here, please to mute and stay muted during the duration of the presentation and turn your video off. I'll first start by acknowledging we have a great group of staff here with us today. So we have, hopefully I'll get all of you guys. We have Jenica Hensinger, Ellen Riopel, Michael Koloff, Cameron Frail here from our staff team. And then we also have all of our board members and directors here as well. So there'll be time to kind of introduce them once we get into the business meeting portion of the meeting. So if you do have any questions throughout the presentations, feel free to pose it in the chat. We will have a question period once Ellen and I have done our presentation, but just to keep things moving, we don't have a whole lot of time this evening. Just post it in the chat if you feel like you might forget it, or else wait until the end of the presentations. And then the business meeting will be held after the presentation, and just a reminder that only members can vote. But membership is open to anyone and it is free, and you could join on our website if you're at all interested. So to dive right in, just a little bit about what we have in store for you this evening. So we're first going to provide an organizational overview, just a little bit of an update on where we're at, as well as going over some of our specific programs and our progress in the past year. Ellen's then going to jump into an outreach update. Then we're going to take your questions, and then we're going to follow up with our business meeting. So we only have an hour here, so we're going to keep things fairly quick, and remind folks that we do our annual general meetings. We alternate our in-person meetings, so we're looking forward to having folks out in person next year. First, I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. So we are gathered here today in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which were first signed with the British Crown in 1726. We'd like to acknowledge that these treaties established the rule for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations, and did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but indeed recognized the Mi'kmaq's rights to their lands, territory, and resources. So we're talking today quite a bit about private lands, and we wanted to just point out that that this is largely a colonial construct and is not actually the way the Mi'kmaq saw stewarding the lands, which is more of an alignment with returning balance and stewardship for future generations. So Canada as a nation was really built on lands that were already occupied by Indigenous peoples who were living on the land under their own laws and societies at the time of colonization. So all of that to say, we acknowledge the Mi'kmaq as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land, and that we are all treaty people. So what does this really mean in terms of bringing a specific reconciliation into our efforts as a land trust? So folks, if you're just joining the meeting late, please remember to mute yourself. Thank you. So beyond a land acknowledgement, we also want to recognize that building reconciliation is a collaboration between bridging different perspectives and taking action. So one thing that we are doing within the stewardship of the properties within our programs is practicing two-eyed seeing, which is bringing together Indigenous and Western ways of knowing, similar, like bringing the strengths of Indigenous knowledge with the strengths of Western science to benefit all. So with over 65% of forest lands in Nova Scotia being privately owned, colonial systems have created specific barriers for Indigenous people to access land and resources. And one thing that we're actively doing is kind of changing our language and considering using the expression woodland stewards or land stewards rather than landowners, as it acknowledges that most private lands have not actually ever been ceded or sold to settlers. So we ask private landowners to kind of reconsider their relationship with land ownership as a concept and vow to act as a steward to their forest and maintaining its health for future generations. So thanks for your attention to this topic. I know it can feel overwhelming or unclear at times, but I think coming together to have these conversations and grow to shared understanding is a meaningful step towards a healthier relationship with the land and each other. All right, so first, I'm just going to talk, for those who are maybe new to the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust, a little bit about what we do as an organization. So we are a not-for-profit society governed by a board of directors, which is comprised of land stewards, forestry and conservation partners, and members of the public. So our mission is really, we've grown primarily through partnership with the Medway Community Forest Cooperative to fill a gap in private land stewardship through working forest conservation easements. So we're the first land trust in Nova Scotia to be able to hold community easements for the purpose of stewarding working forest lands. And through this, we really envision a healthy, resilient forested landscape across Nova Scotia through a network of land stewards that have a shared commitment to long-term stewardship. So what exactly is a working forest easement? So most of what we're doing in our operations, and particularly in these early days, is we're working with landowners to sign and enter into easement agreements that puts specific restrictions on the uses for their property. So with our mission being to preserve the stewardship legacy of Nova Scotia woodland stewards, we've set up a system that it puts in place a legally binding document, which is in the easement, between the easement holder, which is us, and the landowner. So within the easement agreement, it outlines specific restrictions and allowances, which we define within these agreed practices that have really specific requirements regarding land use. So really, we have most of our restrictions are surrounding property development like subdivision, natural resource extraction, and other activities like road building, mining, those types of things. So these easements are tied to the deed of the property and exist in perpetuity. So the example that I have in this map here just showcases one of the land stewards that's involved in our program and the specific different zones and uses for that property. So most of our properties have a similar kind of layout where they have a specific agricultural residential zone, which is maybe where historic farm fields or active farm fields exist, as well as a residence. They also have the area of the woodland that's dedicated for working forest uses, so ecological forestry primarily. And then typically we have a commitment to conservation. So within that zone of the woodlot, it's really more of a forever wild stewardship approach, which is similar to a traditional conservation easement. So what are the benefits to working with us? So there are many, we definitely think so, but just to highlight a few, we are really looking to provide peace of mind to landowners. So specifically, we exist to help landowners receive expertise and stewardship and monitoring for their properties in perpetuity. So with that, we have our great team of forest professionals that does a lot of activities with you as the landowner and provides advice all for free. So we do this really so that we can see and build relationships with landowners and build, a clear strategy for the stewardship of the property over time. We also allow landowners to retain ownership of their property. So a lot of the land trusts that exist in Nova Scotia today are focused on land acquisition, whereas we're very much focused on placing easements on properties instead. We also provide kind of some of the stuff that's not highlighted here. We have numerous programs that provide additional funding for activities like forest restoration or hemlock woolly adelgid treatment that otherwise wouldn't be available to landowners if they weren't taking the step to commit to an easement. So I'm just going to touch on a bit of our process. So we have our team in place to kind of bring landowners through our onboarding that ranges, kind of through this 10-step process. So starting with an assessment of the property, we work and we actually look to see if the property qualifies for our program. Then we move on to signing a letter of intent to agree with the landowner that we're all happy to work together. Then we move into a site visit, boundary line assessment, boundary line maintenance, if applicable. Then we move into kind of developing the documentation for the easement itself through development of a baseline report. Then we work with the landowner to identify different land use zones, develop or update their management plan to Forest Stewardship Council or FSC standards. Then we actually proceed to signing and entering into the easement agreement. And then we kind of have these cyclical steps at the end where we go out and monitor the property annually at no cost to the landowner and supply additional support and resources as required. So next I'm going to jump into our specific program updates from the time since our last AGM, which was held in September 2024. So we've been very busy over the past year. We've signed our first 2 easements with landowners that have been filed with the Department of Natural Resources. We're underway with signing easements with another 3 to 4 landowners currently. And we've signed these letters of intent with an additional 8 landowners. Our field team itself has visited 24 properties and met with 37 land stewards, completed 8 baseline documentation reports, and completed 8 Forest Stewardship Council certified stewardship plans. So huge kudos to our field team for all the hard work that they do in getting properties onboarded within our programs. Next is the kind of our most exciting program is our carbon offset program. So currently our operating costs are covered by government and private funding, but we're moving towards the carbon market as a way to help fund our organization and the costs of endowments for our easement properties. So just in August, we signed a carbon development agreement with the Climate Trust, which is a US-based nonprofit carbon developer. So this is really the first step to develop, verify, and market the carbon offsets from our participant properties. So we actually anticipate being able to start the inventory plots for this program in spring 2025. And then once we proceed with all of the steps regarding program verification, actually marking the carbon offsets themselves, any revenue that we receive will be placed into a specific property endowment fund to cover the costs of monitoring or the legal defense of the easement over time. Next, the next most significant program is our hemlock conservation program. So this was developed in partnership with Medway Community Forest Cooperative and the Nova Scotia Department of Environment and Climate Change to allow chemical treatment options for private land stewards. So this is a really like a 2-for-1 deal. So it's an opportunity for landowners to access both an easement and chemical treatment of their exceptional hemlock forests on private land. So right now we're really focused on properties within Lunenburg, Kings, and Annapolis County. And this program covers all treatment costs as well as costs associated with the easement, including surveys, the endowment, etc. So right now we do have 6 properties enrolled in this program, but we're still looking for 1 to 2 special properties that are quite large in size that have a significant amount of hemlock dominated forest and are within that geographic region. Next program that's been a very exciting development this year is our Ecological Corridors program in partnership with the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute. So this is our first funding specific to acquiring lands within this Ketchimakujik Wildlife Corridor, kind of between like the outskirts of Western Lunenburg County and Ketchimakujik National Park. So this summer we had a widespread outreach campaign in Northern Queens County. We sent out a mailer to 130 landowners and hosted a community conversation in partnership with MTRI and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. And not to jinx anything, but we are currently negotiating the purchase of a property in the Pleasant River area and very excited about that. The last update I'm going to talk about for our programming is our other effective conservation measures. So this is a bit of a mouthy term for what is really a different type of area that can be considered towards Canada's protected area goals. So we're actually we've received funding from the federal government to look at ways that we can find easements, ways that easements can count towards the specifically the 30% by 2030 target. So we're also working with the province of Nova Scotia to assess eligibility of these woodlots. And we have specific funding dedicated to maple syrup producers and specifically trying to find opportunities to place easements on sugar bushes. So we've deployed a survey to over 30 maple syrup producers and are developing sugar bush best management practices. And we've also created a promotional video for this program, which I'm going to show a preview of now, pending technology. It's been a little bit glitchy, so I'm going to give it a try. Just bear with me for a second. All right.
All the forestry that was done here before we owned this place was just phenomenal. Well laid out roads, things were thinned out nicely. There's no areas on the property that were clear cut. There were no buildings on the property. The road was barely passable. All the old dug wells were caved in. I don't know, it could have been 40, 50, maybe even more than that years since somebody else actually lived back here. One of my early mentors that helped me get to this place was Jim Drescher, the owner of Windhorse Farm at that time. And he was just really instrumental in helping me cultivate a vision of a community-operated farm. And I had just never seen that sort of example of cooperation before. It really inspired me to want to create something similar. Ended up combining traditional farming background that my dad had with the sort of community-run farming operation at Windhorse, and ended up creating this place. The farm here is called Owlwood. Jeff and Jacqueline that owned it previous to us gave it that name. The property is about 150 acres. It's bordered on one side by Hebbs Mill Brook. It's got probably 12 acres of pasture, a solid 120 acres of woodland, mixed forest, mostly softwood. There's a lot of hemlock, spruce, a little bit of pine, lots of fir. All the lumber that we used to build those buildings was harvested from this property. From a young age, I was introduced to forestry and harvesting logs, milling lumber, farming, all of that. And luckily, all the role models that I've had have been incredible caretakers of the land. It was always the first priority to leave the farm, to leave the woodlot better than we found it, to work the land with that as our guiding principle. Which trees can I remove that are going to leave the stand better? When I'm harvesting firewood, saw logs, anything, I'm just always looking at that forest and saying, what is not here? What would I like to see here? My experience working with Nova Scotia Working Woodland Trust has been nothing but respectful, educational, just seeing the hard science that they use to sort of determine everything it is that they do. It's just so nice to have a technical team of advisors who just really know their stuff, are excited and enthusiastic to share that knowledge in like a real sort of dynamic way.
Okay. Next, I am going to pass it off to Ellen to provide our outreach update.
Hey, hi everybody. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name's Ellen. I'm the Outreach and Comms Coordinator here at the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust, and I'm just going to give a very brief outreach update. Next slide. So events, we've been super busy hosting events since the last AGM. Through 2024, we were pretty focused on info sessions, and since then we've kind of branched out. So we've hosted 8 events to date in 2025. So we've had 5 community conversations, all in person. A boundary line maintenance workshop, which was in person in collaboration with North Nova. A woodland finances workshop, which was online in collaboration with the Federation of Nova Scotia Woodland Owners, and our AGM, which is currently happening online. Our most well-attended event was the Woodland Finances with over 70 people in attendance. So we're hoping to offer a lot more of these kind of informative online workshops to land stewards in the coming year. Second most well-attended event was actually our most recent community conversation, which we hosted in collaboration with land steward and Annie Ganesh, and that had more than 45 people in attendance. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about community conversations because this has been a big focus of the teams over the last couple months. So as I mentioned, we've done 5 of these around the province. We've done them in Burlington, Bars Corner, Caledonia, Wolfville, and Antigonish. Each of them tend to have like somewhere between 20 to 45 people, and that kind of varies. And they've been really popular so far. Kind of over these 5 events, we've been able to reach more than 140 people, most of them being land stewards. And how they kind of work is we partner with land stewards who have signed letters of intent and are committed to working with the trust. And we work with them to host them in their community, usually at a community hall. And the land stewards are really involved in planning and promoting the event. And they also get to speak about their woodland and their experience working with us. And some of them also include a little woodland walk on their properties. The NSWWT staff also give a short presentation, and then it's followed by a facilitated discussion, which is a really important part of the event where land stewards can connect, share challenges, and exchange ideas. And these conversations have been really informative for us to be able to learn about the communities we're working in and some of the issues they face. Next slide. So this is just a little, some statistics from a recent survey we did. So this is from, we surveyed our existing committed land stewards, and it kind of speaks to the like the power of the community conversation. Our intention with that is to kind of harness the word of mouth and like trusted partnership. So we know that word of mouth is one of the most effective ways to get our name out in the community, whether that's from friends, family, or a woodlot owner cooperative or organization. You'll notice on the chart 30% of people have heard of us through trusted partner organizations, including Western Woodlot Services Co-op and North Nova. And then another 10% is word of mouth from friends and family. Another significant chunk of that chart is the woodland owner conferences. So that's something we'll be continuing to show up at. And these are just kind of things that are informing how we're building our outreach strategy moving into the next year. Next. So this is just a little snapshot of where we are in the province at the moment. We're a provincial organization. Most of our properties have kind of like started in the west and we're slowly kind of moving east. You can see the little dots spreading. It's always fun to update this map for each presentation as it kind of grows and we add more little dots on there. We've had a really busy summer in terms of outreach and onboarding new land stewards. So we're now in 7 counties, Shelburne, Queens, Lunenburg, Kings, Colchester, Antigonish, and Guysborough. So the green dots on that map are a part of our carbon program and the blue dots are in our hemlock conservation program. And there's also a cluster of 3 up there in Colchester County. We just launched our cluster program earlier this year. So this allows land stewards that are just below that 200-acre minimum to be able to join as long as there's a neighboring, what we're calling anchor property. So property that is that 200 plus acres. We have 2,000 acres, which we are onboarding into our carbon program, and that's spread across 9 land stewards. We're also in negotiations with 4 other land stewards for that carbon program, which would bring us up to bring in another 800 acres. And we have just over 450 acres onboarded into our hemlock conservation program, which is across 6 different woodlands. Next slide. So what's next? Our primary focus is really building relationships with land stewards and continuing to grow the number of woodland stewards in our program. That's really the foundation of what we do. So we're aiming to have 4,000 acres enrolled in our carbon program by next spring. And our goal is to have 800 acres of hemlock forest enrolled in our hemlock conservation program by 2027. We are also working to become a registered charity, which will be a major milestone for the organization and open up a lot of new opportunities, including land donations and our ability to issue tax receipts. We're in the process of preparing our conservation zones for submission as OECMs or other effective conservation measures, which MJ kind of spoke to earlier. Another exciting step is the goal to purchase our first property under the Woodland Acquisition Program, which MJ was also talking about a bit earlier. And finally, we're exploring opportunities for land back and how we can support Mi'kmaq communities in reclaiming access to some of their traditional lands. We're still in the early stages of this, but see it as an important part of our work and of reconciliation.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. I'm gonna end the slideshow for a minute and allow us to open up the floor to questions. So feel free to raise your hand. So one of the icons in the top bar has a little hand icon and says raise. So if you have question, please raise your hand. We're going to leave about 10 minutes for questions. Tom, go ahead and unmute yourself, of course, before you ask the question. Ellen, did you happen to mute folks and maybe they're
Okay,
not...
am I there now?
Oh, we hear you, Tom. Great.
Okay. So maybe it's the right place or not, but So you said something about resource extraction there. So as a member, you wouldn't be subject to mining? Like I always thought that, whatever's underground isn't yours.
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. So our easements unfortunately do not restrict the ability for your lands to be expropriated for mining. But we are building a story and improving like what we call social license to really make it not very attractive for your property to be developed for mining. So really, like we see this as like our 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 staff going out, finding species at risk, showing the great contributions you're making as a land steward to conservation through, exceptional stewardship or whatever it may be, and kind of in hopes that that approach will minimize kind of the risk of mining if that were ever to happen. But yeah, you're totally right that it's not actually something that we're able to restrict within the actual purposes of the Community Easements Act.
Okay, with the FSC certified side plan, does that make your wood products FSC certified?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So in the carbon section of your woodlot, is it only workable acres, or like we've got a wooded swamp here, which I was told doesn't apply? Is it only on land you can work?
For certification?
For the carbon? Would
For
the
the carbon.
Would the carbon in that swamp count?
Yeah, so it really depends. So if it's like a very low, like not really merchantable, or it wouldn't, conserving it wouldn't hold any kind of like additional carbon value, typically that is excluded. So when we're looking at our acreage targets for the carbon program, we're looking at forested acres rather than like, wetlands or barrens or anything like that.
Okay, well, I'm talking, we have a wooded swamp. Like, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. The wood that's there doesn't make any sense, but anyway, but if it was wooded, you might be able to get away with it, or?
I think you could. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you could. You could make
All
a
right.
case there at least. Yeah. It's worth
Okay.
discussing further. Thanks, Tom.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Alyssa.
Hi, I'm part of the group from the Dalhousie project, and I just asked Jenica if it was okay if I said a few words about the project, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to turn my camera on just so people see that I'm a real
Yeah.
human. Okay, hi everyone. So I'm joining mostly as an observer just to see what's going on with the trust, but I just wanted to say a few words so nobody was confused when you heard about this project going on. But my name is Alyssa Rose, and I'm here to represent a group of graduate students from Dalhousie University and St. Mary's University. And we're partnering with the Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust as a part of our forest ecology and management course this semester. So over the next month and a half or so, we're going to be working on creating a toolkit for current and prospective landowners as part of this project. And we're going to be providing information on how landowners can open up their land to public access so that the public can access things like trails or other natural features. So our toolkit aims to be kind of like a how-to guide on like the legality, maintenance, and best trail practices for public access to private woodlands. And we're also hoping to provide you all with some templates of signage and other useful information that you can help to give the public the best possible experience on your woodlot, if that's what you're looking to do, is to open up to the public. So as far as from us to expect, we're going to be sending out a survey. So we're going to be in contact with Jenica about this, about distributing, but expect to hear from us over the next month and a half or so. And we're just going to be looking for information about your concerns, any challenges you're facing on your land, and if you have any ideas of things that you want us to include in this project. But yeah, I just wanted to say a few words so that if we were reaching out, nobody was confused about these random people asking them about information about their lot. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Alyssa. That was a great overview. Any other questions? I see there's some discussion about carbon revenues in the chat. I don't, with the plan to acquire property. So Don McDonald, an SWWT depends on carbon access to cover costs of managing the easements. With a plan to acquire property, is the funding required coming in within NSWWT or donations and other government funding? Yes, it's coming from Parks Canada, the specific funding that we're working with for acquisition now. But we do hope to be able to solicit donations of land in the future, which is part of why we're going after charitable status. Next, we have Patrick, who asked a very poignant question about how much revenue would 4,000 acres within the carbon program generate for the Working Woodlands Trust. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what that number is, but it's not as significant as we would hope it would be. Roughly, like we anticipate, and of course, like the revenue is over a 40-year duration, so that's actually the length of the carbon offset sale agreement. So we're hoping to be able to generate like probably a couple $1 million of revenue in that time. That might be optimistic. But that, of course, is like spread over a very long period of time, spread over a lot of acres, and is very comparable to like what it costs for our staff to go out and tend and steward these properties, as well as the potential costs of going and defending our easements in court. Because of course it's great if we're working with land stewards who are really keen on an easement, but they won't own those lands forever. So we have to maintain this ongoing relationship with new stewards to make sure that they're abiding by the terms of the easement and happy to do so. Okay, so Don also asked, how is the relationship between the province and NSWWT working, whereas the province is pushing mining and NSWT is emphasizing conservation? Great question. The province, I think, actually likes our approach because we're not pure conservation. We are a hybrid approach between working forests and conservation. And I think the province also understands that mining isn't necessarily going to occur everywhere. So we do have a couple projects that are pending funding with the province, as well as we do receive some funding from the province as well for our programs. And I do think they appreciate our hybrid approach. But of course, I can't speak for them myself. And then I think this is going to be the last question regarding minimum acreage. Yes, I didn't actually get into those details today. We were trying to keep this like a pretty brief overview, but we do have like all of our eligibility criteria on our website. So currently for the carbon program, our minimum acreage is 200 acres. But if you are adjacent to a property who is already enrolled, or if you can gather your neighbors or friends or other woodlot owners in your area who are interested in clustering, if you have a property that's over 100 acres, we are entertaining those as well. We just need to basically be able to pay for our staff costs to go out and monitor those properties and essentially decrease our administrative burden when we're still in the early days of the organization. It is our hope that we will have programming available in the future that will be able to work with those smaller landowners before, but of course it's all contingent on funding, and the carbon is really our best bet in trying to become a little bit more self-sufficient, because oftentimes it's hard to rely on funding when politics change quite rapidly. So we do have a smaller program requirement for HWA, so that also, I kind of mentioned earlier, we are looking for properties that are around 150 acres for that. So with that, I'm going to close the questions. If you do have any additional follow-up questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Ellen. If you just reach out to our info at Nova Scotia Working Woodlands Trust.org. So I am going to resume the slideshow and pass it over to our board chair, Pat Wiggin, for our business meeting.
Hey folks, how are we doing today? It was nice seeing all the engagement in the chat there, tons of questions, so hopefully tons of follow-up. And thanks to Ellen and MJ for that presentation, because that was fantastic. So it's nice to see all the accomplishments over the course of the year, and you know how we're spreading the good word. Again, yeah, my name is Pat Wiggin, I'm the board chair, and here to kind of carry on with the business meeting and helping me kind of run the show here to present the finances will be Katie McLean. So we'll go to the agenda here really quick. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. We've got the approval of this agenda, the presentation of last year's minutes, which we can go through. It's just a couple slides. And then Katie McLean will walk through the financial statements, and then we will introduce our new board nominations. So we'll have to do some approval for new directors. So first call is the motion to approve the agenda as presented. Do we have anybody? Can I get maybe a show of hand? Okay, so Katie raised her hand. So Katie McLean for the minutes. Oh, Andrew Oliver from Western Woodlots is our minutes taker, our secretary. So yeah, she's the first motion, and then we'll need a seconder to carry the motion forward. Can I get a seconder? Okay, Don Monroe, thank you. Motion carried. Okay, so now we'll move on to the presentation of last year's minutes. So in attendance, myself, Don Kimball, Katie McLean, Andrew Oliver, Donna Crossland, Amanda Labors, Don Monroe, and Laura Carter. And then staff, Mari, who's on mat leave, Shayla, Mary Jane, and Cameron. We went through the agenda. We had the agenda was approved. I'm just going to kind of walk through the nitty gritty. It's more or less the exact same thing that's happening here. And I think the next slide is probably where it gets important, Mary Jane. The only added thing to the agenda minutes was kind of the membership structure, which maybe we'll go right down to after we get through who was nominated last year. So we welcomed Ryan Dickey, Laura Carter, Amanda, and Don Monroe to the board. So they were nominated and approved. And it's been great having them. And the big piece of business that we were talking about last year in our meeting was the proposed membership structure. And that discussion was led by MJ. And it was proposed that we would have different categories of membership reviewed with the attendees. The categories included land stewards, partner organizations, community supporters, and then we went through the costs of memberships, and we proposed them to be free. And I think we had a virtual vote. It was all kind of months after the fact, but we had a virtual vote to approve the membership structure. And we had some discussion around board terms, rotation, and board recruitment. And then the meeting was adjourned shortly after noon, and this was all an in-person meeting. If nobody has any burning questions about last year's minutes, maybe I'll call for a motion to approve those minutes as presented. Okay, it looks like Amanda is calling for a motion to approve. Is that correct, Amanda?
Yep.
Sherm and Cindy, is that a seconder or is that a question? Maybe you can write in the chat. There's only a seconder to carry it forward.
Yeah, it's a seconder.
Okay, great. Motion carried. So we'll move on from the minutes here. And I'll get Katie McLean to take the stage here and get us through our financial statements. Go ahead, Katie.
Thanks, Pat. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, great. I have my child's headphones on. I'm not sure how the mic is. So Belleville Vino prepared our financial documents for us as with last year. So we have a statement of financial position and a statement of revenue and expenditures that we'll take a look at. So first we have the statement of financial position up here. See that when the year, so we operate on a calendar year, January to December. And at the end of the year, we closed out with $75,481, $274 in prepaid expenses, and then you can read the total. And in terms of liabilities, you'll probably notice the bulk of it is a loan due to Medway Community Forest Co-op, and that's a non-interest bearing loan. When the organization was initially incubated by the MCFC as a project, that loan was granted. There is no set date for repayment, so gradually over time, when we're in the financial position to do so, we've been paying that off. So you can see that difference from 2023 to 2024 was fairly significant. We did make a decision to scale back on that within this last year. And you'll also see we have deferred income. So many of the grants that we secure are on a government fiscal year basis, so April through March. So that typically reflects the funds that we have for work that's going to happen in January or February and March of the following year. So that to close out the project in March of 2025. And I think ultimately those are the highlights of it. If you want to go back, we are back at that. Maybe I'll pause and take any questions before we jump to the second slide. It's not very exciting. Seeing, hearing none, there's more opportunity. You're not cut off yet, but we can go to the next slide, Pat. So we have our revenues and expenditures. So you'll see that the vast majority of the funds we secure are through grants and similar type of funding structures. So we secured about $315,450. I can't speak tonight. I'm so sorry. You're all financially literate enough to read. About $315,000 in grants. We have management fees reflected in both revenue and expenses, and it's confusing and not confusing. So essentially it reflects the relationship between the community forest and the Working Woodlands Trust, where we sell wages to one organization, but similarly, the other organization sells wages to us. So Mary Jane and Ellen are both employees of both organizations, but receive a paycheck from a single organization. And that is the trajectory we've stayed on. That being said, we still have we filed for a ruling on whether we're HST exempt or not, and that could impact how we choose to structure those paychecks in the future, because we don't want to be paying unnecessary HST as an organization. But it's been over a year and we've yet to receive that ruling. So we're operating kind of the status quo. So that's why you see management fees as both revenue and expenses, and then a little bit of merch sales, so things like t-shirts. And then under expenses, the vast majority of what we spend is human resources related costs. So you could actually combine the line for salaries, wages, and benefits with management fees, because again, those are our wages were selling to the MC, like that, reflecting that trade back and forth. And I did see a question about employee numbers in the chat, so maybe that's a good time to answer that. Last year, it would have been 4 full-time.
Equivalent. We had Mario Lamarck full-time, Shayla Nickerson full-time, and then Ellen and I are technically part-time.
Yeah.
And then Cameron Frail joined us in the summer, and he stayed on for the remainder of the year. Right now we have Ellen and I, and then we have about 4 other staff who are on very well. Actually, Sheila Nickerson is permanent full-time, and then we have another couple staff who are on contracts.
So you can anticipate that when we present our 2025 statement, it's going to be an even larger number for salaries, wages, and benefits. And ultimately, if we look at revenue versus expenses, you can see we had a deficit of $21,946 at the time. But one important thing to keep in mind is at that moment in time, when we took this snapshot, we were still owed a fairly significant payment through the Environment Canada's OECM project, and that would have come in the new calendar year, but the same fiscal year of that project. So it's just that mismatch in the 2 different timelines that we use. And I believe at that point in time, we still were owed our final fit payment for the year. So ultimately that all balances out. We've done a relatively good job in operating according to budget and having a balanced budget. It's just that based on the moment in time, there was a bit of an incongruency of when the funds had come in. So perhaps with that, I will ask for, or I'll make a motion to accept the financial report as presented. And then if after a seconder, we can have discussion if there's any.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, we'll need 1 seconder here. Laura Carter seconds it. Motion carried. Andrew, that was Katie and Laura on the board. Thanks. So, quick discussion, or doesn't look like we have any burning questions here, folks. Finances are airtight, Katie. The seconder was Laura Carter, Andrew. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat and I was looking at the screen at the same time here.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, you want to go? Okay, so now we're on to the board member nominations, or board director nominations. But first, I'd like to say, and the board and the staff would like to say a thank you to Donna Crossland and Greg Watson, who left the board, but they had unique contributions to the organization over the years. Donna, I know, was with us from the organization's infancy, lots of multi-hour strategic meetings, and yeah, really happy to have had her for as long as we did, and sad to see her go, as well as Greg, who offered a wealth of knowledge and is a great forest steward and a good forest tech. And yeah, anyway, so thank you very much. Next slide, MJ. So we'll go to the new board nominations, and I'll read these blurbs about the new noms. So Celeste Devar is a woodland steward, tourism operator, facilitator, and experiential tourism coach who creates high-value experiences connecting travelers with local food, culture, and nature. Alongside with his wife, Susan, he operates Earth Rhythms, offering year-round custom programs in Western Nova Scotia's Bay of Fundy and Annapolis Valley. And prior to that, he spent 21 years with Canada's Federal Park System as a visitor experience program manager, and is also a woodland steward with the Trust, caring for 84 acres near Wolfville. I'm Hi, Celeste. Haven't met you in person yet, but hope to soon. Next is John Brasner, woodland steward and conservation professional. Worked for over a decade as a biologist with the Department of Natural Resources and 20 years with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as a research fish ecologist on Lake Superior. Excuse me. His career also included time as a wetlands policy specialist with the Department of Environment, as a contract biologist with Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Since retiring from government, John has been pursuing a variety of conservation projects and serves as its finance director. I'm gonna have a hard time pronouncing this one, Mary Jane. Maybe you can help me.
I think only John could help us with that. I don't know the Thank you, John.
Yeah,
Watershed Alliance.
Watershed Alliance. Yep.
Thank you very much,
Beautiful.
John. Yeah, well said. Indianapolis Valley. As a woodland steward in the North Mountain, John sees his role with the trust as an opportunity to support long-term stewardship and conservation. And then we have another new board nominee, Tom Miller. Woodland steward, first started working in the woods over 50 years ago. He began with a 3-month forest harvesting technician course with Scott Paper, where he worked for a year as a power saw operator, and then he attended the Ranger School, I guess, if it was in 1976, but we call it the Maritime College of Forest Technology now. After a couple of years as a district supervisor with Scott, Tom transitioned to private contracting, realizing he wasn't much of a company man. Tom has served on various forestry boards alongside with his wife, Lori, who was named Nova Scotia Provincial Woodlot Owner of the Year in 2005. And together they steward 500 acres across 2 woodlots, where Tom continues to serve as a forest keeper. So welcome aboard, pending these motions. So, having heard the extensive and wonderful resumes of these potential new nominations, I'll have to make a call for a motion to elect these new directors. So can I get a motion?
I'll move. This is Katie.
Okay, hey Katie, and then it looks like Don seconder, Don Monroe for the minutes there. Andrew, I don't know how good your internet is because it seems like you keep missing the seconder. But Katie McLean for the first motion, Don Monroe for the second. Motion carried. Thank you so much, folks. Where are we here?
That's it, Pat. That was all.
Oh, it is. Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess we're on to adjournment. So we actually do need a motion to adjourn, but we don't need to second it.
There's a couple questions in the chat.
Oh,
Okay, should we open it up to some questions and then adjourn?
yes.
Okay, so where are we here? Patrick said, what's the highest risk to the success of the trust according to the board? I mean, that's actually a really good question. My first instinct would always just be, would always be cash flow. Going through our carbon program, it seemed pretty, we had a really long back and forth, multiple months going through that carbon agreement. And I think that would probably be the only other like seemingly present risk in my eyes. But again, we went through that agreement pretty extensively to make sure that both parties that were entering the agreement were pretty well protected. So I think we handled ourselves pretty well with that. Again, being a grant of an organization that primarily gets most of its money from grants, that's always there's always uncertainties associated with that, but it doesn't mean that the organization isn't going to continue, because we already know that the easements are. Does any other board member have anything to add to that in terms of just kind of risks that that you see as a director at the director level?
Maybe a kind of general one with boards is just that like risk of losing momentum on the board. We need to continually be recruiting people in who want to sustain the organization. And that, I mean, so far we've actually had an amazing board, but we're a very fresh organization.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Katie. Katie and most of us have been around since the organization started. And for most of us, it's both a professional and a passion project, just seeing this forward and making sure that the MJ and her staff have everything that they need going forward to make the best decisions for the organizations and for the land stewards that are involved. But yeah, it's always a challenge making sure that you've got time to be engaged and that other board members remain engaged and are able to at least offer as much services that they can in their free time, because it is a volunteer gig. So as much as we are grateful, we recognize that everybody has lives and it's difficult. How do you foresee future funding for the trust? From Mary. So I guess maybe MJ, you're probably the best person to tackle that question.
Yeah, so part of why we ventured into carbon offsets is to help reduce our reliance on grants and funding over time. So once we have that program off the ground, all of the revenue for it goes into costs for the endowment for individual properties, but we will be using the investment return on those endowment costs to pay for our operating costs, so our staff and travel and everything else. We are currently the recipients of quite a significant grant from a private foundation. So that funding does run out at the end of 2026, but we're optimistic we'll be able to continue working with that funding partner beyond that window, as well as that's kind of my role is to continue to find new and diverse funding opportunities for us as an organization. And it hasn't been an issue yet to date, but diversity is really key. And we've seen a lot of friends and allies in the States lose their funding recently with changing political views. So we want to remain as stable as possible outside of government funding as well. Yeah, good question.
Okay, it looks like that is the end of the questions here. Maybe I'll scroll down here. Okay, now we're good. That's it from us. So maybe we'll get one motion to adjourn, and that'll conclude the business meeting and the AGM. Amanda, thank you very much, folks. I think we just need the one motion. So yeah, again, thanks for attending. MJ and Ellen, thanks for presenting. And to all of you guys, huge turnout online. And I know it's a Monday and we all got stuff to do, but we really appreciate you guys taking the time to get to know the organization, get to know the board, and being a part of it is just as much as we are. So again, have a good evening, and we'll see you guys very soon.
Thanks a lot, everyone. And for our directors, we'll actually be leaving this meeting and heading to our regular invite for our board meeting. So thanks for tuning in with us, and we'll give you guys a couple minutes to get oriented. But thanks everyone for coming, and have a great night.